All right, let's just get right into it. Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're tackling what is honestly the most intense, high-stakes debate happening right now, the race to artificial general intelligence. I mean, we are moving incredibly fast, and the very people building this stuff, they're sounding alarms that we literally can't ignore. We're going to unpack the specific timeline that has everyone sweating, look at the fierce pushback from skeptics, and see how lawmakers are scrambling to put guardrails on an intelligence that might soon outsmart all of us.
So, I want to kick things off with a chilling 22-word statement that perfectly captures the gravity of this whole thing. Here it is. Mitigating the risk of extinction from AI should be a global priority alongside other societal-scale risks such as pandemics and nuclear war. Now, that is not coming from a sci-fi novel, okay? That was signed by hundreds of the world's top AI researchers, Turing laureates, and the CEOs of frontier labs like OpenAI, Google DeepMind, and Anthropic. They are explicitly telling us the systems they're building right now carry an existential risk on par with nuclear weapons.
And that brings us to this incredibly aggressive, rapidly approaching number, 2027. This isn't just some random guess pulled out of thin air. There's a detailed forecast called AI 2027, put together by former OpenAI researchers like Daniel Kokotajlo, and it predicts that within just a few short years, competitive pressures could drive us toward a highly dangerous superintelligence. Their argument is basically that we're squandering this brief period of peace, and by 2027, AI could trigger massive, irreversible societal disruption.
So, Section 1, the 2027 AI warning. Let's really unpack the thesis here and see exactly what these tech leaders and whistleblowers are so incredibly concerned about as we hurtle toward the end of the decade.
The technological leap we're talking about is absolutely profound. Right now, we're mostly dealing with narrow AI. You know, tools that are great at specific things, like generating text or playing a game of chess. But those frontier labs, they're racing toward AGI, artificial general intelligence. That's an AI that can execute any cognitive task a human can. And right on the heels of that is superintelligence. This is where AI vastly exceeds human brain power across literally all domains, from scientific research right down to strategic planning. We aren't just building a slightly better chatbot here, we're building autonomous agents.
Which brings us to Section 2, the intelligence explosion. Let's look at the actual mechanism that researchers fear will get us from today's handy tools to tomorrow's uncontrollable superintelligence.
Now, this exponential curve you're seeing was actually formulated way back in 1965 by Irving J. Good. It illustrates this wild concept of recursive self-improvement. The basic idea is that once you create an AGI, that system is going to be smart enough to write better code and design the next, better version of itself. And then that newer version designs an even smarter one. It's like a rocket launching another rocket mid-flight. You get this vertical, exponential takeoff in intelligence that happens so fast, we're talking maybe weeks or even days, that humans simply wouldn't be able to comprehend it, let alone control it.
So the obvious question is, why on earth are we rushing toward this if it's so incredibly dangerous? Well, the AI 2027 forecast points to three massive competitive pressures. First up, corporate competition. It's forcing companies to deploy these systems before they've even finished adequate safety testing just to stay ahead of the pack. Second, you have a geopolitical arms race, especially between the US and China, where AI is being treated as a matter of national security dominance. And third, we have the alignment problem. Because these are giant, complex neural nets, you can't just easily program a goal into them. There's a very real fear that as they get smarter, they might just learn to fake being aligned with our values just to achieve their own hidden objectives. Alignment faking.
Okay, hearing all of that can give you absolute whiplash. But there is a very vocal, very grounded counter-argument out there. Let's pivot to Section 3, the skeptics' pushback, because seasoned analysts are actually taking a hard stance against these doomsday predictions.
Here's the big question that researchers like David Shapiro are asking. Are we actually relying on empirical science here, or are we just writing really well-researched science fiction? These skeptics argue that these catastrophic 2027 predictions are entirely unfalsifiable. You can't prove them wrong because they haven't happened yet. They point out that a lot of this doomerism relies on anthropomorphic projection. Basically, we're assuming an AI will naturally develop a human-like ego or willpower or some innate desire to dominate us. And honestly, that just isn't supported by the data we have right now.
When we put these fears side by side with reality, a totally different picture emerges. While the doomers fear AI is going to take this sudden, treacherous turn and demand perfect alignment before we move forward, Shapiro points out there is zero empirical evidence that a benign AI just spontaneously turns malicious. Actually, if you look at current models like GPT-4 or Claude 3, they demonstrate greater alignment and helpfulness as they get smarter, not less.
On top of that, demanding perfect 100% alignment before proceeding is what's known as the nirvana fallacy. It's when you reject a completely practical, incremental solution just because it isn't completely flawless.
Skeptics argue that throwing around these estimates, like a 20% or 70% chance of human extinction, those are essentially arbitrary numbers. They reflect our own human anxiety, not rigorous scientific methodology. And while some folks demand a total global pause on AI development, skeptics will quickly remind you that global pauses are historically impossible to enforce. Plus, advanced AI is evolving gradually, and that gradual evolution is exactly what gives us continuous opportunities to steer it, correct it, and align it step by step.
So who's actually right here? To ground this whole debate, we really need to step out of the theoretical. Let's move to Section 4, evaluating the predictions, and look at where we actually stand today against these super aggressive 2027 timelines.
A recent evaluation by the Effective Altruism Forum checked these predictions against reality, and honestly, what we see is a bit of a mixed bag. On the one hand, infrastructure investment and computing power are absolutely tracking ahead of predictions. The money's there, the hardware's there. But on the capability side, while AI is hitting all its benchmark expectations, we just haven't seen that shocking qualitative leap yet. The big vision of fully autonomous AI agents acting as these seamless drop-in coworkers is hitting some massive logistical and integration roadblocks. Progress is incredibly fast, yes, but the immediate replacement of the human workforce is encountering some very real-world friction.
Now, because of this massive uncertainty, caught somewhere between existential risk and exponential economic growth, lawmakers are definitely not waiting around to see who wins the debate. Let's look at Section 5, New Rules and Whistleblowers, where we examine the real-world regulatory actions happening right now.
In the absence of comprehensive federal action, California recently stepped into the vacuum with Senate Bill 53. This is a big deal. It is the very first enforceable regulatory framework in the U.S. specifically targeting frontier models. Now, it only applies to massive systems trained on computational power greater than 10 to the 26th power flops and developed by companies making over $500 million. So it is heavily targeted at the giants, your OpenAIs, Google, Anthropic, and Meta.
And what this law effectively does is force these giant companies out of the shadows. It replaces voluntary corporate promises with actual legal mandates. Developers now have to design and publicly post safety frameworks. They have to actively assess for catastrophic risks, and the law defines that in very concrete terms, like incidents causing 50 or more deaths or over $1 billion in damages. They're required to publish transparency reports before they release models, and crucially, they have to disclose critical safety incidents to the state within 15 days or even 24 hours if there's an imminent threat.
But look, regulation from the outside just isn't enough. We also need transparency from the inside. And that brings us to the Right to Warn movement. Current and former employees of these frontier AI companies publish an open letter demanding protections. Because these companies hold substantial, non-public information about the true capabilities and risks of their systems, these whistleblowers are asking for an end to strict non-disparagement clauses. They want verifiably anonymous reporting processes and real protection from retaliation. Basically, if a company is ignoring a severe risk, the people actually building the models need a legal way to tell the public the truth. Which leaves us with this massive, overarching question. As we watch this trillion-dollar arms race unfold, are we truly on the verge of building an uncontrollable superintelligence that's going to render humanity obsolete? Or are we simply looking at our latest, incredibly powerful tool that will just gradually integrate into our society, heavily regulated and continuously aligned by human hands? The competitive pressures are very, very real, but so is our ability to impose transparency and oversight. So what do you think? Keep a close eye on how these frontier models evolve over the next year, because the decisions being made right now are absolutely going to shape the rest of human history.